pink nightgown. "Mary Lou, wake up," he whispered to the young woman in the other bed. "Look what I've caught." "Huh?" said Mary Lou, blinking and raising up on one elbow. Her hair was done up in pink rollers. "Betty, are you out of your mind? It must be past 1 in the morning." The night was slipping by much too quickly for the trapped mouse. He was terrified and he was desperate. No one in his family had ever been trapped under a drinking glass before. Worst of all, he was failing Keith and endangering his family. "Wake up, Mary Lou, and look," insisted Betty. I was getting up to stop the rattle in the window and caught a mouse." This news roused Mary Lou from bed, and the two young women knelt on the carpet to look at Ralph, who promptly turned his back. He did not care to be stared at in his misery. But it was no use. The woman moved around to the other side of the glass. "Isn't he darling?" said Betty. "Just look at his cunning little paws." Mary Lou leaned closer for a better look. "And his little ears, aren't they sweet?" Betty was delighted. It was disgusting. It was bad enough to be trapped and stared at, but to have this pair carrying on in such a gushy fashion was almost more than Ralph could stomach. Cunning little paws indeed. They were strong paws, paws for grasping, the handle grips of a motorcycle. "Oh, Betty, do you suppose we could take him back to Wichita with us?" asked Mary Lou. "My 3rd grade would love him." "So would my kindergarten," agreed Betty. "We could keep him in a cage on the ledge, and all the children would bring him food from home. It would be such a good experience for them to have a pet in the classroom." "Well," thought Ralph grimly, "I always wanted to travel. A cage in a kindergarten in Wichita, however, was not exactly the destination he had in mind." The minutes were slipping by dangerously fast. He had to do something. "Look," he shouted through the glass in desperation. "Let me go. Please let me go. There's something terribly important I've got to do." "He squeaked," marveled Betty. "He's adorable," squealed Betty Lou. It was no use. Young women could not speak his language. Ralph was in despair. He thought of Keith, tossing feverishly in his bed, and of his family huddled in the mouse nest waiting for his safe return. "But I don't see how we could possibly take him back to Wichita," said Betty sensibly. "We're driving to San Francisco and then to Disneyland before we start back. How could we carry him thousands of miles?" The two teachers looked thoughtfully at Ralph, who knew his fate depended on their decision. Was he to be carried to Disneyland and eventually to the ledge in a kindergarten room in Wichita? Or would they let him go? The third possibility crossed his mind. Perhaps they would leave him under the glass for the housekeeper to see. He hoped not. He did not think he could last that long. Already the inside of the glass was beginning to feel warm and airless. "I suppose we shouldn't turn him loose in the hotel," said Mary Lou. "Mice are pests, even if they are cute." The teacher not only destroyed Ralph's hopes, she hurt his feelings as well, calling him a pest when he was on an errand of mercy. From the mouse's point of view, the teachers were the pests. "I know," exclaimed Betty suddenly, causing Ralph to look over his shoulder for a clue of what it was she knew. "I know how we can get rid of him without hurting him." The young teacher reached over to the bedside table, where she picked up a picture postcard. She slid it carefully under the glass and under Ralph's feet so that he was now standing on a postcard. He noticed the picture was of a giant redwood tree, the same postcard all travelers bought when they came to California. "Now, what are you going to do?" asked Mary Lou. "Watch." Betty carefully lifted the postcard, Ralph, and the glass and walked across the room. Even though he knew it was useless, Ralph scrambled around in his tiny prison. He was afraid they were taking him toward the wash basin. He had heard of mice being drowned by people who did not like traps. The teacher walked to the wash basin, but not to the wash basin, but to the open window. She held Ralph across the sill, removed the postcard from the glass, and gave it a little jerk that shook Ralph into the vines that grew up on the side of the building. "There," she said, and closed the window, leaving